All right, so we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to the unveiling of the Cannabis Research Coalition. I'm excited that everyone could join us today because I know that our industry needs help on so many levels. And in my personal opinion, it is only a matter of time before full legalization happens, which means having academic and industry research on genetics, cultivation techniques, plant nutrition, disease, pest management, cannabinoid production, environmental impacts will drastically help with creating a more sustainable and profitable industry. And since I'm new to the position at the CRC, I thought a fun way to get to know the Cannabis Research Coalition would be to interview the founder, Dr. Allison Justice, with questions we received ahead of the webinar, which would allow us the opportunity to educate those who have reached out to the CRC to learn more about who we are, what we do, and why we're doing it. And we are going to keep today's webinar as short as possible so everybody can get back to what they're doing in the day to day. And whether it's in the weeds or working in the office, we want to make sure we're addressing those questions we received during the registration. There may not be time for a live Q&A, but please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And if we have time, we'll address them, or a member of the team will get back to you within the day or so. There's also going to be a survey after the webinar. If you could please fill it out, that would be great. That will help us understand your needs and help give the education that you would be seeking. I would love to kick it off with Dr. Justice. I'd love it if you could share a brief intro into your background prior to founding the Cannabis Research Coalition and the Hemp Mine.
Sure. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for joining me and putting this on and helping organize. We're so excited to have you. I'm so excited to bring your experience and what you have experienced yourself in the cannabis industry, and together with everybody here, everybody watching, everyone already members, just getting together and really pushing this industry forward. I think is imperative to do. But I am Dr. Allison Justice. I got my PhD from Clemson University in plant science. Shortly after that, I went out to San Diego, California, where I was VP of operations for a vertical cannabis company. There, I did a lot of research. Thankfully, the company I was working with allowed me to do so, even though it was a commercial facility, but learned a lot, and even more so learned how much more research is needed. And so, this is not just cultivation research that's needed. It's needed everywhere, absolutely. But having a background in plant science and plant cultivation science, in short, that's what the CRC is all about, is being able to grow these plants, grow them well, grow them inexpensively, and then getting that into the next steps of the production cycle, getting them to the producers and to the medical doctors and to those patients, which we're doing this for. So it all starts with us, so we have to do it right to go to that next step. But after I left California, I came back home to my home state, South Carolina, where I began the Hemp Mine, which is a vertical hemp company, as well as starting the CRC, a union with Clemson University. So that is my background, and a short and sweet go.
I'm sure you're definitely leaving a ton out. I actually know you are, but that's okay because we want to keep today's webinar very brief for everybody. So let us know what the mission and purpose is of the CRC.
Yeah, so the purpose and mission is very near and dear to my heart. Basically, us partnering with academia and cannabis industry leaders, whether it's vendors or growers, and really coming together to explore this plant, really hitting scientific-based research, again, through industry and through academia to develop sustainability, efficiencies, and ultimately profitability.
Awesome. And so what inspired the formation? Obviously your love for research is definitely one of them, but what else?
Yeah. So I love the research. One is just it's fun for me. It gets me going. It's like solving a puzzle, but at the same time, it's needed. Um, being in commercial cultivation in California, it really opened my eyes to what's needed as far as cultivation research and technical ability goes. I understand when you're growing on a commercial level, every square inch matters. Wasting dollars, which can be the thought process behind some of the owners of these businesses. It's a hard decision sometimes to do this and this project, or dedicate that to research, or dedicate that to profitability, which is a skewed view that research does not equate to profitability, because it certainly does. But of course, there's extremes with that, and hopefully you'll find through this talk that basically we want you to let us take those extremes out of the research and give you those tools to work with to then use at your facility. The other thing is, in cannabis, even though we're still so very much in our infancy, universities are jumping on board. They're doing research, all having to use the host plant hemp, technically. But the thing is, because it's such foundational research right now, versus if you think of an apple, how many, peer-reviewed journals are there out there about apples? A lot. And so, if you want to do more research, you're having to go pretty deep into it, because all of the easier foundational stuff's already been done. But for cannabis, it's all very much foundational. So, 50 plus universities across the US are doing this research. But the problem is, a lot of people are doing the same thing, because there's not direct communication between those different laboratories and universities that are all studying this plant and trying to understand, how do you root it best? How much light's needed, et cetera, et cetera. So I really see the CRC as additionally being this uniting unit that can take grad students and professors from these different universities, and let's work together. I'm doing this study, it's the only one I can do because then I graduate, but let's share that with this new person that's coming to another university, and they can build off of that research, versus 5 doing all the same experiments at one time, and ultimately wasting the industry's time, because what we need is to build and to grow very fast, because this plant's been kept underground for so long.
Absolutely. One missing component is bringing the operators from within this space, because universities, they may understand how to grow other agricultural crops, but if we're trying to solve challenges that the industry specifically is having bridging the gap between the universities and the operators, bring them together to say, what are the challenges you're facing? We can really get to the root of some of the issues to improve those efficiencies, lead to profitability a lot faster than waiting for the university to come out with the research. So this really,
Exactly.
like you said, unites everybody in an ecosystem. Is how I have viewed the CRC as an ecosystem between operators and academia as well. So let's go on to the next question. What are some of the challenges you face in conducting cannabis cultivation research, particularly?
Yeah. So, us and universities, part of the problem is the federal government, you know, whether you're going to call it type 1 or marijuana, it's federally illegal. So every university has to use hemp as the host plant. Um, but there are grants and funding out there, but the majority is actually for grain and fiber. And so, our focus being greenhouse controlled environment, growing for cannabinoid production of some sort. And so USDA funding are going to those very industrial type products or projects. And so if the goal is growing for floral material, that funding's not just there. And there's some private funding happening, but those are usually for businesses that need a project done, and they're not looking to have that IP shared. And so it's kept very quiet. And so, with the CRC, it's public. Everything's published, but the perk here is you never know. It could take a year or two or more to get something published into a journal. Well, the day it comes out of the greenhouse and results are looked at, that's when our members are getting those results. Or maybe there's experimentation that, it wasn't enough to write a paper on, but it's very valuable. Those are shared as well. So it's more than what the general public gets. Very, very, very valuable information. The other problem we see with bringing in funding is the businesses. So on the industry side, the businesses, the people running the money, not necessarily understand the science and the cultivation, helping them understand how to turn science into profits. And so having a background, from a farming family where pennies matter, a background from academia where, there's just so much exploration, but not necessarily efficiencies. We unite those two in producing data that matters, data that can instantly, show you, well, I can save this much money by increasing my yields, et cetera. And in a minute, we'll go through some slides of examples of that. And so, I just understand how important it is for the people that own the business to realize the investment, whether it's with the CRC or whether it's, allocating you 10 square feet to run certain trials. We understand that it matters, and we know you understand that too. So help us or allow us to help you convey that to, to the owners of the business.
I love that. Can you trademark turning science into profits? I think you should. Hopefully, unless it already is trademarked by somebody. That's a very good summation of exactly everything that we're doing. We are literally taking research and helping the growers. It simplifies it by turning science into profits. So next question I have for you. So we have, in my eyes, a very impressive partnership with Clemson University and a couple other universities. Can you share what kind of research we have conducted with them? I know you have some slides you'd like to show of some of the research we have conducted.
Absolutely. So I want to show some slides, and I think that'll do a few things. I think it'll tell you basically, or give very good examples of the type of experimentation we do, the quality, what we're doing. I'll kind of expand on some of these to show you where these are going to go, because these are all projects that have been finished. There's talks in our monthly meetings that's already on the website. And I can kind of talk about what's to come from these, even though some of them are finished. Flushing was a big one. With this said, we've learned a lot, but there's even more we don't know. But what we have learned so far is pretty exquisite. So think about flushing, right? And for our experimentation's sake, that means getting the media down to 0 EC. So it requires quite a bit of flushing of clear water through, and there's literally no nutrients to pull from. In this example, you've got 0, 1, 2, and 3, 4 weeks of flushing that will happen on these plants. And you can see very clearly the nutrient deficiency based off of the time it was flushed. Different color leaves, different color buds. I hate in this picture, you can't see exactly how different the buds are, but when looked at closely, the ones that were flushed are a lot more dense than the ones that were not. And so, that's just one other thing that can lead to increased profits. But what I really want to talk about is this one simple aspect of flushing. So let's think fertilizer. Let's think, we're not even talking about how it affects the curing the smokability, right? Let's just think dollars, because in a business sense, that's what matters. if you are a cultivator and you're spending 40 cents per square foot per week, which is a high number. If you're a cultivator mixing your own salts, that you could get this down to about 0.01 cent per square foot per week, but the industry standard, the average is about 40 cents. So if this is what you have, and you have a room, or maybe you have multiple rooms broken into about 10,000 square feet, well, that is $4,000 per week you would spend on fertilizer. All right. Well, the science on the right, what we've been able to show with this is from 0 to 2 weeks of flushing, there's no decrease in yield. Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that other things aren't happening that could make 3 and 4 worth it. But if we're talking yield only, 2 weeks is great. You flushed it, you have the same amount of yield, but what's the difference? 2 weeks of fertilizer use might not seem like a lot, but if you add up the total from a full year, let's just say you do 4 runs a year, that would be 2 weeks for each run, 8 weeks total for the whole year. That's $32,000 in savings. 32. So that's a pretty big deal for a cultivator, and just for a small 10,000 square foot area. So, whatever size your grow is, do the same math, and very quickly science talks. The other thing I want to point out here is, we understand if you're a cultivator, you want to do your own experimentation, but it's hard to make giant extreme changes, because that's your profit. Well, what I like to say is let us take those extremes out for you, and then you can do a much safer trial on your own, with your commercial plants. Because of course, here at weeks 3 and 4, it affects yield so much that no matter the difference in smoke quality, it's not going to make sense in the greenhouse to flush for this long. So that's one good experiment with big numbers to share. This is nutrient restriction. So I hope you can see we're doing a little bit that's unique. Flushing is a regular thing, but nutrient restriction is something that's done in ornamental horticulture a lot. So I can remember back when I was in grad school, one of my projects was looking at New Guinea impatiens, so just a flowering plant. In the greenhouse space, it's very common to use PGRs to control height because they can get, long and spindly. Well, you know what? People are wanting to get out of that, wanting to get out of the use of those harsh chemicals. And so what can you do? Well, phosphorus makes plants stretch, right? But it also helps with flowering. Well, maybe there's a happy medium there where you lower your phosphorus early on and you reduce stretch, and then you don't affect your flowering at the end. Same sort of concept here, but this is where Mike from Clemson University is looking at nutrient restriction there within, let's say, the first 14 days of flowering. So you basically have a pre-flush and a post-flush. And what he's showing here, you can see in the example on the bottom, even 7 days of nutrient restriction. In his experiment, it was all nutrients. It wasn't just phosphorus, but you can see the very difference of size of these plants. And if you look closely, and his data supports this, between the 0 and 7 day restriction, the only difference here is the vegetative material, not the floral material. So you're getting the same yield. So there's one more week off of your fertilizer use.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Lighting's a big thing, not just intensity, but DLI and critical flowering times. This is OG that you're seeing here in the picture, and these are basically hours of short day that you're giving the plant to flower. Well, 13 hours looks terrible. And you can kind of see it in the photos here. When flip under shorter days, 10 hours, 11 hours, look how much more dense the plants are. That's pretty obvious. But the other thing to really think of here is looking at that 12 hours, right? Because 12 is standard, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And it's not quite that easy because different cultivars will respond differently. But in general, it's very important to think this should be something you consider. So again, looking at 12 hours, look at the pistils. They're still white. This plant's still growing. And so it needed another 2 weeks to finish. 2 weeks in your cultivation square footage. That's huge. That adds up, depending on the size of facility you are, millions of dollars by adding another 2 weeks that's unneeded, that's not doing anything special except wasting your time. Okay, Rudy.
I'm going to interrupt you, or myth busting. Like, I mean, I'm so new to the CRC, but you're really proving these myths, and it's again going back to helping increase efficiencies and improve profits. So just going to keep reiterating that because I'm impressed by our research, and this is helping me learn as well as share with everybody else what we're working on.
Absolutely. Easy one, rooting hormone. In rooting hormones, that's just a short word for auxin. But there's so many different types of auxins, combinations, concentrations. Well, what does cannabis need? Well, right now you have brand A, B, C, D, and E, NIF. And a lot of that is just personal preference. And your preference might be gel over a powder. That it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, shouldn't the preference be potency, efficacy, not necessarily a brand? And that's the way I think about a lot of inputs in the horticultural space. It's not necessarily a brand, it's what's in that brand and how does it actually work. In this example, we were looking at Clonex versus work from Alex from Clemson, where she looked at these different concentrations and types of auxin. Well, you can see with all these different varieties, which have very different responses just to rooting in general, ours was superior because of science. And of course, even though it's not commercially available, a lot of these recommendations you can mix yourself, which sounds grueling and like it would take a lot of time and a lot of extra effort, but with the cost savings, it's not. And with potentially saving 2 or 3 days, if you're sticking 10,000 cuttings per week, that's a big deal. That's a lot of space saved just by switching a product very quickly.
And labor. I remember when I was your intern out in California, that was, I felt like sometimes we were spending days on cuttings. And when you would say we need 9,000 cuttings by the end of the day, my eyes just were like, wow, so amazing to be able to save not only on the products, but the labor costs as well.
Exactly. All right.
Wow.
So something I've proclaimed I'm crazy interested in the last couple of years is the whole drying and curing. Basically everything post-harvest. So important, as you guys know, is certainly, 50% of the quality of that product. You have to grow it. You have to grow it well. Aesthetically, that's the growing cycle is where all that happens. But if you dry it wrong, it's going to turn brown. If you cure it wrong, it's going to taste like grass. And so really wrapping our heads around that and pairing it with cultivation and these teams working together is so important. And not just important for looks and feel, but food safety. This is the part where the plant is dying, and when plants die, they should rot. And so having a real grasp around what your environment needs to be and how you safely need to preserve, because of the terpenes, because of the aesthetics, because of the safety portion, is imperative. And so here's some work we did, really looking at VPD and how that calculates back into humidity and temperature and what that looks like over a certain amount of drying time. So something you'll want to check out in a little more detail. I got one more. Okay, here's just another tease of what's going on in drying and curing. This is looking at those different gases within drying. This slide specifically is drying. So this was a fresh bud put into a sealed container, and we looked at oxygen, CO2, humidity, and ethylene. And if you haven't got to measure ethylene yet, you should, because it is so high. Um, Granted, we don't know if that's a good or a bad thing yet, but what we can say is that it's so high. It's higher than what you would expect avocados to be, if that puts it into some perspective for you. And the effect ethylene can have at such low levels is so great that really wrapping our head around where it accumulates or disperses throughout post-harvest, and what those levels are. Obviously, this is step one, is that foundational research of saying, we don't know what or why or what to do with it, but here's what it is. And from there, you manipulate, you do more experimentation, and then you optimize. And that's when you get product perfect every single time, because you know what you're measuring.
Perfect product that has yet to be seen, but I think some people believe that they do have it, and I think it is out there. And we'd love to have people involved who do feel that way. We can conduct the research to see how perfect they are. So we have, the slides that you showed are some of the research that we've conducted with the University of Clemson. We also have roughly about 8 or 9 other research projects that we're also working on that we're under NDA, but just to put it out there, we also do contract research for companies as well. We offer a discount to our members on that contract research. So I think it's important that I wanted to make sure that we address that, because that is huge. I know a lot of people are like, I don't know I have this great product we're ready to put it to market, but we need to really prove that it actually works and can improve efficiencies. And that's something that we can handle within the Cannabis Research Coalition and our team. So thank you for sharing those slides. It's great to have a visual on the actual work that we're doing. So in terms of member support or how they get involved in the research, what kind of involvement do the members have? Are they hands-on? How does it work? Are they coming here and conducting research? Are we going there to help them conduct research? What does that actually look like?
So like you said, we've got to kind of separate it somewhat. So we have our contract research, which are for companies who want something specifically done for them, that they have the option to say, don't share this, or hey, share this. We love what's happening, have at it. But in short, the memberships go towards the academic research that we share in our monthly meetings. From there, we certainly do collaborate with other growers. And they might say, hey, that flushing experiment was awesome, but I'm going to cut out the weeks 3 and 4, and I'm going to do 1 and 2 weeks myself. Look at my experimental design and tell me how I should run it at my facility. And we can certainly help you out with that. And what that does is really builds on what we've already done in maybe a much bigger setting in your facility, and potentially with a type 1 versus a type 3 plant. And so it really just grows the impact of what we're able to do.
When you say type 1 and type 3, just for anybody who may not be familiar with those terms, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so a type 1 is what we would consider you may call it marijuana. It's high THC. Type 2 is usually a 1-to-1. So let's say you have a flower that's 20% cannabinoids. Well, 10% would be THC, 10% would be CBD. And type 3 is AKA hemp, and usually a high CBD or a high CBG type plant.
Makes sense. And correct me if I'm wrong on this statement too. We have our host plant is hemp because that's what we're legally allowed to use. But some people may have a different notion that it's hemp. It's not cannabis. It's not marijuana.
Right.
And however, we have conducted and showed an analysis that it's hemp, and we've reproduced that within a type 1 marijuana grow facility and got the same results. Is that
Absolutely.
accurate? Okay.
Yeah,
I
and
went.
just looking at the pictures we showed earlier, the had we not said for some of those pictures, you would have maybe thought it was type 1, or you would have had no idea. The hemp plants, at least at Clemson, that we've been using are ones that I've bred, and that was the purpose. Was for my hemp company to look and smell like marijuana, have extremely high cannabinoids, terpenes at between 2 and 4%, different growing habits purposefully, as you would imagine, growing a very sativa leaning variety versus a very indica, short and stout, long and lanky. But with the purpose of preserving those flowers smokable for smokable flower. And yeah, we've repeated lots of these experiments at some of our partners' facilities. And yeah, absolutely. I think any researcher out there would say this is you can consider this the same plant in this type of research. It is the same plant.
It is. Oh, it could go days. We could go in like circles about that too with
Yeah.
people. But we won't do that today to anybody. I'm super excited about our. I didn't know this until I got here to South Carolina that we had a grad student program. We get so much outreach. I've been here 8 days, and I've gotten so many grad students reaching out wanting to get involved. What is that about?
No, so we love grad students. They are the future of this industry. They are the future of the science of this industry. And so being in contact with them, understanding what's going on, connecting them with other graduate students, I think is so important. Professors a lot of times have a lot to deal with there at the university. And so using the grad students that are involved in cannabis studies and uniting them is really one of the things we want to do and are doing. We also have a few perks for grad students. We've got grad student sponsorships, so they get free sponsorships for doing certain things that then help out our members. So for example, they're the ones reading those 20-page long peer-reviewed journals and throwing it together in a short paragraph for us, where we're working. We want to read those journals, but there is no time. But what we can do is look at a couple important graphs with a few sentences that point out the really important things of this going on in the technical world. And then from there, if something really sparks an interest, then you read, the rest of the journal. We do graduate student funding. So a couple grad students each year. We help with the funding of their education. We have internship programs where we help everything from undergrads to PhD students do internships, summer internships, year-long internships. And we like to keep a job board where, these students that are coming out, putting out miraculous research has a place to, put their resumes where, maybe your company out there, they can look and say, all right, well, that research fits exactly what we need. They've got a great reputation, with working with some of these CRC members. It's just a nice place to really connect the industry with those who are about to enter the industry.
That's awesome. I love to see that we're helping out. Just feel like it's such a unique offering to an organization within the cannabis space, and I'm excited to be a part of it. What other kind of benefits do members receive when joining the CRC?
Yep. So, as I was mentioning earlier, the academic journals, sectioned off and ready to just click versus having to Google it and find it and find find which website has it for free and then try to digest all of that technical jargon. Um, We have access to protocols and SOPs, direct access to the other members who are obviously, because they joined, very, very hungry for science and to collaborate and work with other companies. So just a very nice union of like-minded individuals that want to share. We have an annual meetup where, you know, there's so much data that just one grad student or one university researcher gathers. And so we have our annual meetup where, not only do those people come together and elaborate on the experiments, but have a time to get together and just talk face to face and share what they got going on.
Awesome.
The
Is that
other thing I don't want to forget is the importance of saying that when we want to do projects that's important to the industry, we mean it. So, if you're in academia, there's things you're interested in, but is that the most important thing that's happening in the industry? Maybe, maybe not. So having feedback from actual growers in the trenches, doing the day-to-day, understanding what's the problem, lighting, insects, whatever it may be, and helping point us in that direction to really focus on what matters. I feel like that's one of the biggest thing our industry members can offer us.
That is such a great point. Sometimes we get, into ourselves and what we're doing as a business, and we feel that what we're doing is best in the best interest. But then when you bring everybody together collaboratively, it's like, makes sense. You have good points, but we should probably be focusing on this particular issue first and then going on to that. So
Exactly.
great point, great point. So is there anything you want to add? Is there anything else you
Yeah,
want to
I
speak
guess
on?
the last thing is I didn't mention, if we didn't mention already, but the other thing is a monthly webinars. So every month we have a different researcher or industry leader come and give a talk and share their research or current thoughts or something that we find very important to share. And that's monthly.
And we have the summer already planned out with some really great speakers, and that is actually one item that is exclusively available to our members. We don't offer that publicly. It's an incentive and a benefit for our members to incentivize them. So appreciate you mentioning that as well.
Absolutely. And then last, I am going to turn it back around to you. And I'd love for you to talk about our legacy membership, something, an idea you brought that I love it. I love it. Please talk about it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Justice. So with my decade of experience in facilitating brands transition from the legacy market into the legal market, I completely understand the immense financial challenges and burdens it is to transition, especially as a small operator. It can take years to turn into a profit, which most of us on this call know that. And it makes it impossible to join organizations like the CRC. And we created a solution that can help maybe mitigate that, because we want them to be involved, but we fully understand that cost is usually the biggest issue. And there's so much value to be brought to the table from people who've been growing for 35 years. They're fifth generation farmers, and it's just there's so much that we can learn from them. And so I'm excited to announce that our new legacy and small business supporter membership tier, and it's designed specifically for larger operators who want to support and bridge that gap between the small and large operators, because we know collaboration is key, and we believe that this unique tier will show the genuine commitment of the larger operators to uplift their smaller counterparts. They do genuinely want to help, and it's just we haven't really come to that bridging of the gap yet. And I feel that this is a good way to unlock those growth opportunities and break down some of those barriers that we big operators are one way, smaller that way. We need to all really work together and showcase the power of unity in the legal market. We're setting a precedent for the generations to come. So, and this path has been paved way before us. We're here trying to tidy things up and bring people along who can continue on this path. And turning science into profits is one of those ways. So, if you are considering joining the CRC, I really highly encourage you and your team to really take a look at our legacy supporting tier. And, reach out to us and let us know if you are interested. We're happy to also, customize that to what maybe your needs may be, because we want to help support you and because you're helping support the smaller operators. So again, thank you, Dr. Justice, for your time today and your commitment to turning the science into profits. I genuinely believe that our research and academic partnerships are, it sounds cheesy, sowing the seeds of hope, cultivating a legacy that builds upon the foundations laid by those who came before us, and it's preparing for generations to follow on our path. So if anybody would like more information about the CRC or how you can be a part of our movement, please reach out to us at the CRC at thehempmine.com and follow us on social media on Instagram and LinkedIn. And it's at the CRC, or I'm sorry, at Cannabis Research Coalition. And I'm going to put the email in the chat. And our doors are open and we look forward to hearing from you. And again, thank you everybody for joining in today. I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.